So here's what I've been hearing, I guess, from researchers and investigators. Number one, that they're not ours. People can disagree with that. That's fine. That's not to say some of them aren't ours. I think two things can be true at the same time, but that there is a faction of them that are demonstrating the five observables or the observables period to where our drones, and this is again, people that are in the drone community working and have contacts with the DoD have told me this explicitly. And I'm not going to sell them out to make, oh, well, you didn't say their names. Of course I wouldn't. That's right. That's ludicrous. But they did tell me, because I asked them, one of my contacts, and I go, what's going on? Well, we put our drones up there, battery dies, to the point that even sometimes when, like, it's almost like manipulating the distance measurements to where, okay, we think they're this far away, right? But the measurements do not add up. So they're closer to what the actual record is suggesting.
Welcome back. I'm here again with Nathaniel Gillis. Nathaniel, good to see you again, my friend.
Thank you, brother. It's been a long time.
All right. What the hell's going on with all these drones? By the way, there were drones actually shut down Wright-Patterson Airfield or Air Base for, a few hours or an afternoon or a day back in, I think, December. Could have been November, but so these things just didn't fly just over New Jersey, and I think it still continues to this day. Yes. So what's your interpretation of going on? And then there's the whole Cybertruck thing. I didn't even talk about that. That was weird. Look, I'm just going to say this declaratively because it's the most absurd theory I've heard. The Chinese don't have anti-gravitic drones that they decided, instead of attacking Taiwan, to test them on a light show in New Jersey. It doesn't pass the sniff test, right? That was seeded into the consciousness and not very well, by the way, not very sophisticated. Yes. But anyway, what's your take on all this? What the hell's going on?
So I live in Dayton, Ohio. I live about 10 minutes away from the Wright-Pat Air Force Base. My uncle works there. So I'm well aware, very, very much aware of some of the phenomenon we've been witnessing over that particular installment. So here's what I've been hearing, I guess, from researchers and investigators. Number one, that they're not ours. People can disagree with that. That's fine. That's not to say some of them aren't ours. I think two things can be true at the same time, but that there is a faction of them that are demonstrating the five observables or the observables period to where our drones, and this is again, people that are in the drone community working and have contacts with the DoD have told me this explicitly. And I'm not going to sell them out to make, oh, well, you didn't say their names. Of course I wouldn't. That's right. That's ludicrous. But they did tell me, because I asked them, one of my contacts, and I go, what's going on? Well, we put our drones up there, battery dies, to the point that even sometimes when, it's almost like manipulating the distance measurements to where, okay, we think they're this far away, right? But the measurements do not add up. So they're closer to what the actual record is suggesting. Very interesting stuff.
Which, if you're bending space-time, that
you would. There we go. Those in the know, my friend. Absolutely. So we have those two components, and then we have this phrase that I've heard over and over again. I'm sure you have too, where once we get into proximity within it, they go dark. And nobody can really define what that means. Is it turning the light off, or is it just dematerializing? Gone. And so I'll add that to the last thing that they told me, and this is perhaps the most interesting observable, is that the orbs that people are witnessing are not just balls of light, but that people are actually photographing apparitions underneath them on the surface of the ground.
When the United States and China clash, the world will never be the same, especially when forces beyond reality threaten to intervene. What if the United States went to war with the People's Republic of China? How would these rivals fight for supremacy on land, sea, air, and across the stochastic streams of time? What wonder weapons would be unleashed? What horrors would emerge from the irradiated sludge of the South China Sea? What heroes would rise and forever change the course of history? Tread into the deepest and darkest dimensions of the multiverse, gaze through a kaleidoscope of fractured realities, and bear witness to the disturbing visions of World War III from today's greatest minds in science fiction, fantasy, and horror. Weird World War, China. Available now from Baen Books at baen.com.
Now, two researchers that have documented that recently are the Tedesco brothers. The Tedesco brothers. And I believe they were on The Basement Professor or something like that. I may have murdered that. But it was
The
a
Backyard
podcast.
Professor?
There we go. Yes. No offense. Yeah, I forgot his name. But yes, and they showed a photograph of that phenomenon taking place where there's orbs above, on the bottom. There's a partial, I think it was a foot of an apparition. Now, this is demonstrating exactly what I've been talking about. This is not either or, it's both. And that some of these orbs are demonstrating that capability. But firstly, I need to say this too, that that's not ufology. Right. That's redefined as ufology because, again, there are people in the shadows that want to kind of control the narrative. But that phenomenon was first witnessed in possession cases. Oops, that's inconvenient, right? Where the exorcist is dealing with an entity and it comes out of the body as a ball of light. Take that into consideration, put it to the side. Then you move into some of the afterlife studies where at the moment of death, people have recorded, not just recorded with their cameras and then photographic evidence. Eyewitnesses have come forward saying that when my friend died or my husband passed, a ball of light would leave. Now, people are going to say, well, that's baloney. It's not. That's all throughout mythology, all across the world. Now, not just that's possession, that's in mythology. Now we're going to parapsychology, where we see these orbs, what we thought, again, were strictly parapsychological, strictly witnessed and only witnessed in malevolent hauntings, in corpuscular balls of light, which I know you've recently, I don't know how long it was ago, but you interviewed Dr. Barry Taff. His cases in the San Pedro haunting with Jackie Hernandez, his words, corpuscular balls of light, huge, that were moving through the house, and then one, boom, here's an apparition. An apparition tethered to an orb. So this is getting back, this is all fascinating stuff. But what we're seeing again is that whatever this intelligence is, it's either diversified itself in our eyes or it's allowed us to diversify it in our eyes to where, oh yeah, that's UFO. That's a UAP. And in doing that, people think that's not a big deal, but it really is. It has a profound effect on the way we view the phenomenon. Because if that is strictly UAP, then why are they demonstrating, actually projecting apparitions? They're both present. It's just like with the Elizabethan magician, John D. and Edward Kelly, where in the middle of their sessions, they have a ball of light, right? It looks shaped like a UFO, UAP, and there are little men inside staring at them. Now, my question here, again, is if you weren't a ufologist, right, if you didn't think and weren't even told that ufology was a field, what would you think that was? And so, again, they want to separate one from the other, right? They're like, okay, that has nothing to do with sorcery. It has everything to do with it. Matter of fact, that was the very first breath of ufology was the result of experiments within esotericism. So back to the conversation of drones, that whatever the orbs are, it's not just that they are demonstrating the observables with respect to ufology. It's literally now demonstrating characteristics of hauntology, to where the orb itself, with the orb, there is the accompanying apparition. In hauntology, we've seen that too, where parapsychologists for a long time, they thought, okay, we got the apparition. Oh, that's fascinating. They started looking at the photographic evidence. After the apparition, there was an orb accompanying it together.
To advertise on Through a Glass Darkly, email throughaglassdarkly@gmail.com.
Right? And so it's like, again, oh my God, it's an apparition. So we create a whole other field about apparitional theory. We have conferences and books. That's incredible. Not realizing that was a projection of whatever this orb is. Let's go deeper, shall we? My late friend, Dr. Michael Lynch, God rest his soul. He was the very first contact I ever had in ufology. When we got on Zoom, he's kind of like us. We could talk for 3 hours. But he and I would be talking, and he first got into parapsychology. So he was a parapsychologist for 30 years. He was one of the very first ghost hunters. Anyways, he was at a case right before the actual ghost hunters entered in the investigation. He had been there for about 20 minutes, wrapped his research up, outside, packing his equipment into his car. He said it was a very active environment. He said it was at nighttime. This is fascinating. He said, so he's packing up, and out of the corner of his eye, he sees an orb come out of the house, corpuscular ball of light. And he said, prior to this event, it wasn't just balls of light, but there were actual faces in them. I can go into this more with you in depth later.
Oh, by the way, have you seen Bledsoe's Instagram account?
Mm-hmm.
He's got orbs with faces in them. Sometimes with human faces, sometimes like dog faces.
With beings coming out of them. Where have we heard that first? Before we were told what it was, where did it originate? But yeah, you're correct, my friend. And so here's Dr. Michael Lynch. He's out there, and he sees this orb. He said, Nathaniel, he said, until this point, he goes, I just thought, that yes, obviously some of these photographs, they are, balls of dust and stuff. But there is a real phenomenon present. And he said, and that was one of these nights, so he's like, okay, I'm observing these things, but there were faces. I'm talking about like just perfectly formed faces, eyes staring at them as the orb is floating by. He said, and so, he said, I don't know why. He said, but I had a laser thermometer. Because I thought, what the heck? Why not? I'm going to see if I can get a temperature reading. He's like, all right, fine. He shoots it with a laser. And he said, Nathaniel, to my utter astonishment, the light refracted off of the orb. He said it was in this investigation, they were doing like a seance and stuff. And he said there was an army officer or former army officer, really tough guy. And he said that one of the orbs, he said, I watched it. It went through his body and then went out. He said, we kept seeing them all night. He said, but this orb had come through the walls, out into the environment, out into the street and the road. And it was in an alleyway, and he shot it with a laser. And he said it refracted. He said, so whatever we're dealing with, right, again, it can materialize to the touch when it wants. And then can I suggest as well that it can just go black and turn off whenever it wants to. So that's another aspect of what I think we're dealing with respect to drones. Second thing I think we're dealing with, potentially, I think there's more evidence of the former than there is the latter, but the evidence is there, is that what we're dealing with is what's called aggressive mimicry. We first seen it in biological evolution, specifically with predators. And that is, we got to do a show on this too, maybe another day. Aggressive mimicry is when one species approaches another species, but in order to veil itself in their presence, it appears as that same species. Right? Where I'm a predator, I'm coming after you, but I'm going to blend into your environment. I'm going to suggest that I belong in your environment. Don't even worry about my presence. You've seen me 1,000 times. It's just a drone. And that was partially what my contact told me, was that some of these do look like they're drones. But when we get upon them, the observables are present, and we realize, remember what I told you guys? The archetypes, parasitic mimicry, aggressive mimicry, where it's present with but absent from. It's that archetypal drone where, okay, when we engage it, we start to realize that's not at all what we thought it was. I can go into this too real quick, and I'll kind of wrap it up, at least at this point. We can go wherever you want to go. But again, my brother was working, I've probably shared the story before, working with a group of researchers who had positioned.
Yep.
Yeah. And that thing came and contorted itself into what we would think is the plane and blended in our reality. So
yeah, it looked like a Cessna, but if you zoomed in on it, it was not quite right. Which is actually a lot of these drones are exactly like that. They kind of look like an airplane, but they're not flying like an airplane.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And they don't look quite right. Yeah.
Yeah, I've explained this in the past, brother, where you won't know. It's like the mimic, right? We were talking about that earlier, right? It's the twin, all of that bilocation, where it's only after you engage it, you start to see, oh, wait a minute. It's way different. And, you wouldn't believe the DMs I was receiving during the whole drone craze, I should say, on Instagram. I was getting tons of them, I'm like, okay, what do you think this is? Some people thought they were angels, and others, had a lot of people have their theories and everything. But one common element was that, well, I saw it. There we go. It was a drone. I saw it. And I think that goes a long way in explaining what we're dealing with. And this is some of Steve Mayer's work too, where specifically speaking about the drones and UAP that were over some of our most guarded installments in the country. It wasn't specifically like one case study. It was a nuclear silo. It wasn't just that we had absolutely no control over our airspace. That was the least of our worries. And it wasn't just that they had disarmed our nukes. It was the fact that when they actually got inside of the silo, that something had stepped through the walls and had begun unplugging all the cords. And then they're gone. So we don't even have vocabulary for what that is. It's one thing to say, okay, yeah, we think they're mimicking drones. It's like, no, they can go into our most guarded installments and just wreak havoc and then leave. So I think there is aggressive mimicry occurring, and I believe that some of these drones are civilian. Some. But when you're talking about a school bus-sized UAP, and this is what I was told, that when we approach it with our drones, it messes with our observation of it, messes with our distance measuring. How far? I'll get there in 5 seconds. It's no going all black by the time we engage it. Yeah, it's if you were to take some of these drones and put them back 50 years ago, they would say, yeah, that's a UAP. That's a UAP because of the observables, and that's what I kind of hold true to today.
What do you think the purpose of that whole display was? Because it wasn't just over New Jersey. Like, we got reports from Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana, reports from Picatinny Arsenal, Ramstein Air Force Base, Lakenheath in the UK, all over, all sorts of different U.S. military installations. Just New Jersey is where all the news was. Dayton, right? That's another example.
Yeah, for sure. I tend to lean towards, at least this is what seems the most plausible. I've seen video evidence of our government, getting their best jet out there, get out there, chase that thing. We're going to see what it does. Even, some of our best helicopters trying to engage them. We know, at least from some of these case studies, that at times they've actually almost commandeered the consciousness of the very pilot. I don't have to shoot you down. I will access your body. One experiencer said that it was a lot like Matthew Roberts in his case study, but said after he witnessed this UAP, he started to have near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences when he got back to the airbase. He said he was in a stall in the bathroom holding his head in his hands. And this kind of goes in what we're talking about earlier in the last episode. And he was having out-of-body experiences. He was out of his body staring at himself. So I think that some of these are civilian. I do believe that some of them are UAP, and I think it's all true. That some of them are our government trying to what is going on? How do we assess this threat? And yes, that's only when we knew. Yeah, you engage it. The observables don't lie. I mean, they're transmedium, brother. People are saying, well, put it this way. One guy was like, well, we witnessed this coming in and out of the water. Yeah, 50 of them. 50 of them out of the water. Okay.
By the way, the Chinese don't have submarines that can launch drones, let alone anti-gravity drones.
Oh my God. Okay, first of all, if we knew, let's just, again, hypothetically, if we knew as a superpower, perhaps, it's 2025 now, maybe the leading superpower in the world still, I'm not sure about that, who knows, you're going to tell me the United States of America is going to know, oh, by the way, over there off the East Coast is a Chinese submarine? Are you out of your mind? They would go ballistic. I mean,
well, you would see P3 Orions flying all across. There would be a lot of activity. Now, if they were in international waters, you would see a lot of activity, but there wouldn't be a lot that we could do about because subs operating where subs operating. But you would see a lot of like harassment activity by us around that sub to let them know we know exactly where you are.
Absolutely. I mean, it would be like.
And they wouldn't be in fact, those drones, like the instant they crossed over the continental shelf and reached U.S. waters, they would be shot, excuse my language, but shot the fuck down.
You wouldn't have somebody from New Jersey with a 12 gauge. Did you see that video? Oh, boom, 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 boom.
Was that fake or that's the other thing?
Real. I think it's real. Yeah, absolutely. I think. I don't know, but my point stands, like if that was the case, people think the United States we're just a bunch of softies, but we would see a lot more than Radio Shack level drones out there.
Right.
Oh my God. Okay, let me go to Staples and get mine too. Let's make it work. It's not, so I don't believe that. And I do lean towards
there's Ryan Graves just posted something on Twitter yesterday. On December 11th, off the coast of Florida, there was a Gulf Stream that had to land because it was struck by a metallic orb at 27,000 feet. That ain't no drone, bro.
No. I mean,
27,000 feet.
That's insanity. I mean, and I got to be honest with you, my friend. There's a part of me where, especially about 3 a.m. when I can't sleep and I'm trying to, it would be very comforting to know, right? That okay, it's us, or it's my neighbor down the street, or obviously this is not the worst case scenario, but it's pretty bad. Oh, it's China. Here's why. Because that scares me more than this is a non-human intelligence, to be honest. If China had that technology, I would be terrified. Yeah. Well, I did hear something, and you may know more about this than I do, obviously, but regarding Russia's capability in their, we would call it like a space force or something, but they basically attach, it's to a satellite, right? I forget what it's called, but a payload, right? Is that what it's called? Take it up and they just drop it. Like you can't shoot that down. It's like literally just over top of you. So I don't know.
Oh, you're talking about the Oreshnik?
Well, it might be. Yeah, and I think the rumor is that they used it in Ukraine.
They did use it in Ukraine. They did.
That's different. Yeah, so this is coming from a satellite where it's
it's like rods. The concept we called it was rods from God, which is basically you just take
what an awesome name for a band.
Rods from God, but it's just they're just these like tungsten rods that you just drop from orbit, and just the kinetic energy that they produce when they hit the target is catastrophic. Right. Just like a huge, gigantic non-nuclear blast. But I mean, anybody can theoretically do it. You're not supposed to. I think there are treaties against it,
Yeah.
right? But I mean, there's also a Boeing satellite. Nobody's talking about this. That went tits up. Why?
Boeing again? Yeah.
I think there was. I don't think it was an accident. I don't think it was incompetence. I think it was.
No. It's
I think it
sad
was
too when
deliberate.
you start thinking about these back to this concept of what these orbs are. I mean, I found there was one case study, even especially it's fascinating in a possession, where a lady was possessed by her deceased husband, or an entity that claimed to be her deceased husband, and they asked him again, getting back right to our earliest conversation, was the liminal stage of consciousness. What is that? Right? If it's, again, the whole of necronetics, my field of research, is founded upon the following quote: if you die before you die, you won't die when you die. It's an old Gnostic understanding, but I'm starting to believe that was the concept, the necessity of having something to inhabit. But what is that liminal entity that is not limited to a body? If it's out of the body, it's possible that even for a specific amount of time it changes. What is that? And so that's what they were asking this entity. What do you look like? You've been an apparition, you've possessed, but what do you really look like most of the time? And he said, I look like an egg, a white ostrich egg. Very strange stuff. But if that can be solid, let's go down this rabbit hole real quick. I've had cases where, not cases that I've actually investigated, but I've worked with people across the country that have given me photographic evidence of this, where the orb will pass through the body, and much like the remote viewer I've told you guys about, that there are subdermal scarifications, skin anomalies that manifest from underneath the skin to the surface. I had a woman reach out to me about 2 or 3 years ago. Her and her daughter were experiencing a really, really bad haunting, and this thing, an orb, was attacking them. Just like that, Dr. Michael Lynch's case, going through their bodies, and they would actually feel the burn before they saw it. And so it hurt her, obviously, but then they would just watch, like, I don't know why I'm hurting. I don't see anything. There's nothing I'm witnessing from my eyes that anyways, next thing you know, boom, there's scarification, skin anomalies. So it leads me to my point here is that, again, this all does seem to be operating in a dimension we're ignorant of. And this relationship between consciousness and the skin itself is something we need to pay close attention to. So even to the point where the witch's marks, the devil's marks, and that was in antiquity, you fast forward to modernity and you look at some of the abduction accounts where people have punch holes or punch biopsy holes in their skin. And we are thinking, because the narrative, I think, is being driven, that, okay, this happened because they were abducted in their bodies. And that's not necessarily true. If this is all interconnected, right? If orbs of antiquity or, UFOs in modernity, then we need to consider what they've been doing. And even with Betty Lucas, with the other experiencers as well, it's like, okay, I was abducted out of my body. And this is something I want to highlight as well. Sometimes the abduction encounter is not just out of body, but the literal constitution of their consciousness, that figure that erupts out of the body, that they peel from the skin, the flesh, that whatever that is being trained how to fly craft to the point, my friend, where it's literally, we have a chair for you. Well, what is that you have a chair for? We only have a certain amount of vocabulary for it. We'll call it ghost, apparition, astral body, but whatever that is, it seems to be that is what, in some cases, they're grooming, mentoring, recruiting, to the extent that at the end of the experience, these people are told, you won't remember this. Why? It seems to be, and I think we talked about this before, and I might have, but me, when I start going on this Right, like, yeah. So it's almost like they're training the species within the species. And the avatar is confusing what's going on. This is the cognitive dissonance. You won't remember it. They're not talking to the species inside, or what I call the species within. They're talking to the avatar. And then when the species within merges with the avatar, both of them are returned. Now your body starts to demonstrate symptomologies that occurred. First to the species within, first to the soul, second to the skin. So it's over and over again, my friend. And whatever that is, though, whatever that species is, it may or may not be us. It may be something completely different. And this is why I believe we're having such a hard time accurately defining angel, demon, ghost, apparition, alien, ascended master. What if all of these are just vehicles of meaning for us to explain, or at least to grapple with, a dimension of existence within all, or some? That's what I'm leaning towards, is that, yes, it's almost soul first, skin second, and that's all throughout the phenomenology. And I guess I'll kind of summarize that point with this. It was only after some of these people are astrally abducted, then they go back home. And the avatar starts to exhibit symptomologies that directly correlate with what the species within encountered. Can I take that a step further in the necronetics? Is this why Dr. Ian Stevenson and others that work with not just near-death experiences, but past lives, when they're sitting down with people, oh, this is what I looked like. Really? This is who I was. You see where I'm going? Really? Yes. So it's almost as if, again, with the golden bow, it's like, okay, leaving the first body, it still bears some semblance to the body it once inhabited, but it wants another body that bears the resemblance of the apparition. So that apparition that's liminal, having that liminal existence, whatever that is, could absolutely be a different species than the bodies it is inhabiting. Dr. Carla Turner. Woman was abducted. In the middle of her abduction, she's starting to realize what everybody is. There's a spiritual component to this. This is not physical. Sometimes it is, but it's the majority of it's spiritual. What is going on here? And this entity told her, you are a species within a species. I thought I was human. I'm beginning to lean towards the fallen. Now you got me shipping my I'm just my friend. So bear with me for a second because I got to bring this home if I can. When Lou Elizondo is kind of like he's telling us something without telling us. People say he's a disinformation agent. That's fine. Everybody has their own views. Well, let me kind of take this into consideration. Nick Pope recently, I think it was last year, was on with Willie Strieber. He said that the bodies that we are in possession of are interdimensional. What does that mean? Never heard that before. I mean, we have theories that some of them are apparitional sometimes. It's like Bud Hopkins said, we know they're physical some of the time. And so Nick Pope says that. So I'm like, okay. So I go and I email one of my mentors, or actually text them. This is what I'm hearing. Have you heard anything like this? This guy has signed NDAs. He's a friend of ours. Hey, man, what do you think? His response is, absolutely. We know this. What? Interdimensional. So if you take that, you go.
What does that even mean, though? They always say that, but they never define it. But by the way,
yeah,
at the Soul Conference, somebody asked Gary Nolan what he thought they were. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what he said. That was his answer. They're kind of weird. They're interdimensional. What does that mean, though? Like,
well, this is all lining up to be, again, the old argument of demons, gods, and angels, which that's a whole other. I've never really dove into that, but I can say this for sure. Yeah, that was what I was told, right? And we both know this guy. You know, he doesn't work at Kinko's. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I'm saying, like, this is his job. Like, it's not a hobby, is my point. Like, this guy, he wrote 4 episodes of the X-Files. Like, he is a god in the field in my eyes.
Mhm.
So he knows. And I'm like, okay, can you explain this to me? And all he said, full of NDAs, this man. Yes, he's right. So take that. So I'm like, all right. So then I start reading Elizondo's book, and I'm thinking I'm getting an idea of what they're meaning. It's uncomfortable. And if this is true, because obviously we're just, talking about it hypothetically, he said that upon examination, the bodies that they're in possession of did not have the intellectual faculties to have designed the craft they're piloting.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible that they are biological avatars to someone else's consciousness? And that one day they could be dead, and another day they could be alive, and that is almost it's almost a paradox, but it's complementary. Where the interdimensionality of it is that it is being possessed by consciousness, and so it's talking to you one day and dead the next. Slap it, it's dead. 5 minutes from now, hi, I'm back. Is it possible? But this opens up a whole other can of worms. Because again, the phenomenon places us in linguistic paradoxes. Interdimensional to us may not be the same way they're using interdimensional. What is interdimensional, right? So you have to go down that kind of linguistic road. But if, in fact, that biological avatar with organs, with almost free will, perhaps, I don't know that, but let's just, it does. It obeys, or it's just a robot. I don't know. But that point's meaningless compared to the following. If its consciousness is not its own, if there is, in fact, another species within that species, if, in fact, we would consider that entity alive, and we would apply to that entity everything we've applied to ourselves, it flies a craft, it does this, it does that, it has organs. But if it's a biological avatar to a consciousness that inhabits it at its time of choosing, then perhaps what we're being pointed to by all of these individuals is the fact that our consciousness may not in fact be our own. That we may be the placeholders, the biological avatars to another more predatory species that uses us to interface with the world, which we would call that possession. But it kind of lends itself to that form of interdimensionality. And I don't even know, again, linguistic paradoxes, what that would mean. But it would fall in line with a species within a species, where I'm not thinking I'm being fought for, but I'm allowed. And guys, this is exactly what the Collins Elite said. When the practitioners were interfacing with the proto-intelligence, they were allowed to assume control. Allowed to assume. Is it control? No. It gets back to Christopher Hitchens' concept of free will. Do I have free will? Of course. I had no choice in the matter. No choice. And so it's quite probable, I should say, not even possible, probable, that the interdimensionality, they're trying to explain all of the encompassing artifacts of the soul consciousness astral body is us trying to weaponize a species within ourselves that we have absolutely no control over. And to that extent, when we say that targets are real, if they are baked into what is within us, we can only trust ourselves to the extent that we can trust them. Because if they are, again, if there is a portion of our existence that they're using, hijacking, then when I say this is where I'm at, and it's not us looking into them, it's them in us looking into themselves. And I'll kind of wrap it up with this. When we go into even Joe McMoneagle, I think his name was, Pat Price, a lot of these individuals, even Elizondo, when he said that the Collins Elite were, they're zealots and all that stuff. Well, they weren't zealots before. They were zealots after. And the model of the phenomenon they came to was so antithetical to their own religious system that they scrapped it all and went back to obeying the Mosaic law. People don't really understand what that means, but I can tell you this. I grew up in evangelicalism. That's not me saying, hey, listen, you don't watch TV, or I don't think you should fornicate. That's not that at all. It's not, hey, listen, Mosaic law was almost their feeble attempt at saying, what can we do? And the reason, right, what can we do to kind of find favor with another to protect us from that? What their conclusion was that our government was weaponizing this inside of us to remote view them. And if it, I don't keep wanting to go on this, but I think it's dangerous. But whatever that is, the ghost God, I think our ancestors tried to articulate. The ghost of a man is made from the flesh of a God. And if you guys want to, I can even post the paper, because I think years ago I had somebody question me on it. So a guy named Victor Doman published that academic paper, and he draws out this concept and flushes it out.
Yeah, who is that guy? That guy like writes a lot.
He's fascinating. I think, and again, growing up in evangelicalism, there's a lot of authors, dealing with the Rephaim, the Nephilim, and a lot of it, just is my humble opinion, surface level. It's really, truly based on Western scholarship. It's not really rooted in the Mediterranean mind in which it was written. I mean, even in Genesis 6, the author of Genesis 6 was writing to people, but for it was, in other words, the people reading it had to have an understanding of what they were talking about. So, but Doman's amazing. Doman's good. They're all good. I just think that this particular individual is deeper than them all, and that's what's fascinating.
So why do you think this flap happened, given all that? Or is happening? I think it's still happening. I'm acting as if it's not over, as if it's over. It's not over.
Well, I tend to think that there is something there with respect to nuclear weapons, but I don't think it's because of our benefit.
No, they just don't want. They don't want people destroying the environment, their environment. Yes,
there we go. Absolutely, my friend. And people suggest that, thinking, "Oh my God, right? I said something special because it's." You can edit that out. That's me being kind of cheeky, as they say. Yeah, where they say, "Well, they must be love and light because they don't want us to nuke each other." It's like, yeah, but they never stopped the Holocaust. They didn't care. There's a lot of things they didn't care about because it didn't really affect them. But once it starts affecting them, then they come forward. So that's what I lean towards personally. So I kind of tend to agree with you, I believe, where, yeah, it's done to us, but not necessarily for us.
All right, my friend. As always, fascinating discussion. Right, and always love talking to you. So thank you again.
Thank you. Likewise. Always, brother.
If you enjoyed today's video, please hit like and subscribe, and also hit the notification button so you can be notified whenever I post new content. Thank you. Now, if you're enjoying the channel and you want to support it, there are several things you can do. In fact, there are 5 things you can do. The first thing you can do is just buy my books. I got plenty of books out in the market right now, and I would prefer that folks buy a book rather than giving me direct support, because they get something out of it. They get a real tangible product. The second way you can support me is by becoming a member on YouTube or becoming a patron on Patreon. And just go to either site and it'll explain everything. The third way you can support the channel is by checking out my merch site, which is here. There's plenty of stuff that you can get to support the channel. And I'd appreciate that you have it and you can wear it. Not only do you help support the channel, but you also help promote the channel, and I appreciate that. The fourth way that you can support the channel, and this is really easy, is anytime you want to buy something on Amazon, literally just go to the description below and click on any link, literally any link. The channel gets a cut of that, and it costs you no extra money. You just go through the link, as I'm part of the Amazon Affiliates Club. The fifth and final way you can support the channel is through donations. Now, I don't prefer these because it's more of an expression of gratitude, but you don't really get anything out of it as a subscriber to the channel. However, if you decide to do these options, there's two options. There's Buy Me a Coffee, which is a separate site. And there's also, you can go through YouTube with either a super chat, super sticker, or a super thanks. Again, I prefer Buy Me a Coffee because that organization takes less money than Amazon does. But either way, I appreciate any support you are willing to give the channel. So thank you very much and keep watching. I really appreciate it.